Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. I am really thrilled that we are, in the midst of season 4. It's still hard to believe for me, but we, per the usual, have had familiar faces returning. We have some new faces returning. This person is a new face technically to the show, but maybe a very familiar face to all of you, especially many of you who attend the numerous conventions out there. And this is an individual I've been really excited to have on for quite some time. So without further ado, I would like to invite on the show my favorite talent agent from Japan's Legends, Tim Bean. Hello.
Hello.
It's so good to have you here. How are you?
I'm fine.
Awesome. Awesome.
So
Right, right. I was just musing earlier in the back room that it was fun getting to see you at G Fest. I feel like we're both so busy at G Fest that we are only able to ever have like a passing conversation, but even when we do, they're like really good conversations. So, are you able to ever like get away and actually enjoy like the festivities, like the
everybody always asks me how was the convention, and I always respond like the 20 feet around the table that I saw was great.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, getting a chance to hang out with like these really cool stars and all this talent, like that's got to be really fun though. We've known each other for quite a long time. I think we met for the first time way back in 2018. I believe that's when Megumi Odaka was at the convention, and that was actually the catalyst that got me to come back to G Fest. Mountains had to be moved for me to come back to G Fest, and it happened. And it was such a really cool experience. Did we? We may have been connected on social media before that, though. Were we?
Probably, yes.
I think we were. So, but regardless, though, getting a chance to see you every G Fest is always a treat, and it's just really enjoyable to see all the work that you do. And we will be delving into that over the course of this episode. But obviously, we're here. Like the real reason why we're here, not just for me to nerd out, but to hear about your background experiences and story as a Godzilla fan, right? So, going back from the beginning, how were you first introduced to Godzilla?
I've always struggled with this question because I don't remember a first, but Godzilla was my brothers are 6 and 7 years older than I am, and my mother was the big catalyst. She enjoyed the cheesiness of these movies. So they would sit around and do MST 3000 long before MST 3000. Not nearly as well because they're not nearly as clever, but I'm sure there are many households where that happened. So basically, I don't remember a time when there wasn't Godzilla in the house or Gamera or Gamera more because Gamera is cheesy, but
Oh, the Showa ones for sure. I just recently watched the Showa Gamera series for the first time ever. I had seen like the original film, but I had never seen like the subsequent films, and I just remember watching them being like, what's going on? Why are children stealing alien spacecraft unbeknownst to their parents? And it's just so much mayhem, and I really enjoyed. But I mean, so it sounds like the rest of your family were also fans. So like that love of Godzilla, that love of kaiju in general seemed pretty infectious. So were you just like a little kid at this time when you first got into it?
yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, it's earlier than I can probably remember, which is why I probably can't remember the first time. But
Do you remember when you were younger? Do you remember which Godzilla film you really gravitated to at that age?
I don't know if it would be too early, but by the late '60s, Destroy All Monsters was the film that everybody liked because it has all the monsters. So
It was the Avengers Endgame
yes.
of the late 60s, right? Godzilla did it way before Marvel ever did, honestly. No, that's a really good one. That's a really good one. So as you grew older, like branching into like the teenage years, like how did it shift for you? Did you like start branching out, or how did it work for
As I got
you?
into teenage years, I probably got more into comic books and became a big comic book collector.
Ooh.
And at some point, I felt probably too old for Godzilla, too adult,
Oh.
and I
Mhm.
drifted away for many years.
Did you
Then,
ever have people telling you like, "Oh, when are you gonna grow out of Godzilla? When are you gonna grow out of Godzilla?"
well, if it wasn't, wasn't Godzilla, it was comic books. So I was.
Oh.
Now, this is the part everybody always edits out whenever I do a podcast interview because they think it's too personal. But I've told it many times, and I don't care if it's public or not. Basically, what got me back was just before I became turned 30, which would have been about 1990, 84.
Mhm.
Um, I got divorced, became unemployed, and had the choice of living in a cardboard box in an alley or moving back in with my parents.
Mhm.
So I moved back in with my parents and began still a comic book collector. So there was a comic book store in the town, and I went there, and they had all of these Bandai Ultraman and Godzilla and Gamera stuff.
Oh.
And I looked, and I still have it. Uh, the little Bandai Ultraman model for like $7.99, and I felt at that stage, my childhood feels like the safest place to be right now.
Mhm.
So I jumped in and never looked back.
Wow. So, like, in a way, like, collecting kind of became an escape for you for a
Yeah.
while during a very vulnerable time, right?
But what I did at first is I bought all the models before I started buying toys, and I feel like constructing the model gave me some sense of there's something I can control and build, and I
Kind
have
of like focus that energy on, right?
yes, I have some control over. Where the rest of my life seems to be falling apart, here's something I have some control over.
Mhm. No, I think that's really empowering in a way. I mean, another reason why, Godzilla can be an escape in a variety of different ways for us, right? I know, like, for me, and I've mentioned this on the show before too, but when I was a teenager going through heaven knows what, writing Godzilla fan fiction was that escape for me, like, where I could just kind of delve into my own little stories, branching from, like, the main stories and just work things out in my mind and everything, or at least just distract myself. I think the distraction was probably the most important thing in the grand scheme of things, right?
And then after that, Godzilla became kind of something I shared with my son. So you only got to see him on weekends. We could sit around, we could watch Godzilla. We had a good time.
Do you remember your son's first Godzilla movie?
Honestly, I probably introduced him first to Ultraman because I find Ultraman much less scary for a
Mhm.
younger child.
This is true. I feel like Ultraman's a little bit more palatable, and I mean, it depends on, like, I guess what Godzilla movie you watch too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But, like, I think especially early Ultraman is probably far more, like, accessible to kids than
Although by
Godzilla.
the time he was older, I can remember my VCR had a repeat button. And there's the scene in Godzilla vs. Gigan where Gigan slices Anguirus' face, and I can remember him just hitting the repeat and seeing Anguirus get sliced over and over and over and over.
Not that scene. I remember when I saw that scene when I had to have been like 8 or 9 years old. I was like crying. I was like, "Oh, Anguirus' face!" Whoa. And my parents were like, "Do we need to take our child to therapy or something?" Little did they know I would grow up and just take myself to therapy, but that's besides the point. Your son kind of gravitated to those like scenes at a certain point, especially Godzilla versus Gigan. What about Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla? Because I know, like, for me, that was my first Godzilla film, and watching, like, the final battle where, like, Godzilla's just getting obliterated, like, I was just, like, glued to the TV in suspense.
I once got two VCRs and I took every Godzilla movie and I got a however longest tape you could get, put it on super long play, and I sat there for God knows how many weeks just taping the monster scenes onto onto the second tape so that they could just sit there and watch monsters fight for hours upon end.
Do you know what's amazing? Like, I feel like that memory is probably such a limited niche memory that people have. Like, I remember when I was a kid doing that too. I ended up upsetting my parents because I ended up messing up one of the VCRs trying to do that. But I recorded like Mothra, Rodan, Destroy All Monster, like all of them back to back. Like from one tape to another, because one of the tapes they were on the way out. I had worn it out, so I needed new versions. So little did I know that regardless the recording quality, it still wasn't going to be good. But no, I definitely have that memory too. And I know like sometimes I will talk to younger Godzilla fans and they'll be like, VCR, what? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a day when we couldn't just turn on anything, whatever. I mean, back in my childhood, you had to wait until something came on TV, and there could be months in between Godzilla and Gamera movies. That's why I once got told when we were on G32, we were at the Shabu Shabu, and when Freya came over, I said I told the translator, I said I want him to understand that while this is G Tour and then we're here for Godzilla, Godzilla and Gamera were once in a blue moon for us, but every day when I came home from school, there was Ultraman. I said, so you're really more responsible for me being into this than anybody else.
I love that. I love that. So, okay, so this was 1990 that we were talking about, where you were going through a difficult time and you were kind of using Godzilla as an escape. So as it branched into the 90s, that's when you began getting your son into Godzilla, right? Mm-hmm. How about beyond that? Like, how did it advance from there?
Well, the biggest step in the early 90s was obviously JD. I remember, I wish I still had the letter. I remember getting a letter from him. I had bought 2 toys from a toy dealer. Well, after the comic book shop, I found the toy shop newspaper with all the toy dealers in it, and that's when I went, oh wow, there's all sorts of places. So I started buying things from toy dealers. And so I bought a couple toys from a toy dealer who's now apparently his wife made him get out of the business. But he gave my name to JD. And so I get this really apologetic letter from JD saying, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm producing this fanzine you might be interested in. Send, I don't know, a couple dollars and get the latest issue, which was like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. And once I got it, I immediately ordered the first 3 back issues.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been getting G-Fan ever since. So, JD taught us that we weren't, before that we thought we were the only freaks around that like this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, JD helped create the community that exists now. So, we found out, hey, there's other people like us out there.
Especially like in the 90s, like everything was so fragmentary, right? It was in many ways isolating for people, for Godzilla fans, because like how do we build those connections? This was like before like social media and before even like instant messengers became like a huge thing. So no, like so G-Fan at that time definitely was.
This was the time when I actually had Club Daikaiju Showcase Collectibles and Come On to My House on speed dial on my phone.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Now I remember like those like older websites like that I would just browse in the 90s. Do you remember CD Japan? I think CD Japan still exists.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up as a kid making my parents pretty mad because I got a hold of someone's, I don't know if it was a card or something. I ended up buying a ton of kaiju music. And it was like, oh, I loved it. And they were like, they got over it, but they were so mad at me. I was a problem child. But no, so JD, yeah, definitely. I feel like G-Fan magazine really brought a lot of people together. I remember my first memory of G-Fan. I think it was like, was it year 2001? It was when I was kind of like branching onto the internet, like onto the like Godzilla message boards of old and stuff like that. I remember finding and discovering GFan magazine. And as a person who wanted to be a writer, I remember sending him a letter like way back, horribly written letter, because I was literally in like early high school. So did I know what I was doing? No. But I remember sending this letter. I was just like, can I please write for GFan magazine? Probably did not leave a good impression, but hey. So, okay, so we've we've gone through the 90s. So how about after that for you?
Well, then there was G Fest or G Con. So I went in 97.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we wanted to save for a house and blah, blah. Life happens, real
Yeah.
life happens. And so I didn't go back. Really, I was going to go back in 2007 because my educator was like, I deserve to go to G Fest at least once every 10 years. But that was the year my mother was dying. She ended up going in August that year. So it was like, well, that's not going to work. We were here taking care of her. So I skipped that. But, then I inherited money. And so 2008, I went. And I've gone ever since, every year ever since.
So I guess my next question would be like, so where in all of this did Japan's legends come?
The convention came about, and I went, and I was not told what to do. But by then I had been doing G Fest autographs room for 4 years, so I just kind of went, okay, they could use help here. So I just jumped in and started helping, and by the end of the weekend, I was being told, yeah, in a couple of weeks they'll be in Orlando with Nakajima. You should come help there too. And I'm just like, But the thing he did was sneaky. He just before I was leaving, he said, yeah, Tim should come to Orlando, shouldn't he? And by the end of that weekend, the Japanese partnership side of the partnership was like, you come to all our conventions. So I spent about 3 years just assisting.
How did you feel? Like, what was, like...
It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a desire even. I would have been perfectly happy doing what I was doing for the rest of my life. That was, this kind of came about this, at the right time. So it's like, okay, well, maybe this is the way to go. And so I flew to Japan, and we had a meeting, and we formed a partnership, and that's how Japan Legends came about. I won't take pictures with them unless they ask, and it's pictures for them. I when I was in Houston at Anime Matsuri with Kaylee Hoddle, TJ Storm was there, and True Justice sang. It was set up that he and I had a dinner together. We just kind of sat and chatted for like a couple hours.
Yeah.
And afterwards, he's like, take a picture, let's take a picture. And so we took a picture, and I said to him, this was never going to be posted on social media because I just don't do that. It's like, it's like when a star passes and everybody's doing pictures of here I am with the star. I don't have those pictures. I took most of those pictures, but I don't have those pictures.
Yeah. No, again, I just think that is a very centered and poised way of viewing all of that.
I'm not the important one. They are. I always say when I go to a convention and we get our little name, our little tags, and mine says guest, I always say, you really should say guest adjacent.
Oh, I think you're an important person, Tim. I will fight you on that.
For me, they are the important ones.
So and then since like it has grown so much, right? Like you work with so many different artists and actors and actresses now. So I know some of them, like Kaylee Hoddle you mentioned.
Dumb luck. Absolute dumb luck.
I still have yet to meet Kaylee Hoddle, but I'm hoping to at some point at one of these conventions. But
This is the story of Kaylee Hoddle. We were going to do a convention in Germany that was co-opted by COVID, but I remained friends on Facebook with the guy who was going to do it. And one day he posts on, because he's connected somehow. I don't know how he's connected, but he's really connected. He posts, "I'm about to interview Kaylee Hoddle. The fans have any questions for him?" And I just threw in as a joke, ask her if she needs a convention agent. Within a half an hour, I was talking to her mother.
damn.
So I'd like to say that was well planned and brilliant planning on my part, but it was.
Well, maybe networking just comes naturally to you after this experience that you've cultivated, right?
Mhm.
No, I think it's really transformed into a wonderful thing, and I know that many of us in the fandom celebrate it. So I know you're not willing to celebrate how awesome you are, but I will be the obnoxious one and do so for
Oh,
you.
yeah. One of the worst few minutes of my fan life was when at the G Fest uh, luncheon thing when they gave me a standing ovation. It's like, oh, sit down.
Oh, you don't like attention being drawn to you, but I mean, again, that's just a testament to who you are as a person, right?
Well, I always tell everybody, I have a wife and two daughters, and they pretty much took my ego off life support and let it die a long time ago. So
You've had the reality checks.
I don't have ego really.
That's fair. That's fair. So, well, no, I've really loved hearing about that history. I think that's so exciting. So, well, now, okay, the shameless nerdy questions from me because that's what I do. I like looking at yourself as a Godzilla fan now after these years. Like, which films have developed into your favorites and why? And I try to tell people to go with like a top 3 if they can.
Well, the first one is right up, has got to be up there, probably number one. -1 now is a strong contender.
Mm,
Fall short of calling it a masterpiece, but it was a really excellent film.
phenomenal film.
I struggled with the happy ending at the end, but that's just me.
That's fair.
And like I said, Destroy All Monsters is always right up there. Yeah, either the Showa era, um, Mecha Godzilla movies are just great,
They
violent.
are so good.
Yeah,
They're like Terror of Mechagodzilla. I feel like has had this resurgence, and I used to be one of those people that was like hypercritical of it. But now that it's because I never got to watch the original version. It was always the Americanized version. But when I watched the original version, I was just like, it was so the story was so tragic,
mm-hmm.
and I think that really like I tend to gravitate a lot toward the human characters. I mean the kaiju too, but the human characters and like Katsura's entire character development and everything really got me. But no, those ones are a great and of course Destroy All Monsters has that nostalgia factor for
Yeah.
you, right?
It's not Godzilla, but when I was 8 years old, my family went to the drive-in and I saw King Kong Escapes, and
Oh,
and that one always. I mean, it's just a fun movie.
and here you are working with Linda Miller regularly.
Yep. She should be announced for a new convention next week.
Woo! Oh my goodness. I still have not met her yet, surprisingly. Like we kind of cross paths every now and then at G Fest, but never have had really a chance to sit down and talk. So maybe next time if I see her, if I get her autograph, I will just finally get a chance to meet her. So
We'll be happy to chat with you.
she seems like a phenomenal person.
No,
So
she's a sweetheart.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so obviously those films are great. What about like obviously who's your favorite kaiju other than Godzilla? We all love Godzilla. Who is your favorite Godzilla or your favorite kaiju?
That's a tough one. because I'm not like Jessica. I'm not a big Anguirus person. Or I don't have a collection based on one.
Jessica has helped me fall in love with Anguirus because I never used to be a huge Anguirus person, but then after Jessica appeared on the show, I was like, do I need to reassess Anguirus just a little bit? I think I do.
Like I said, from childhood, it's not Godzilla, but yeah, we watched a lot of Gamera because it's just goofy. It's just goofy.
Gamera deserves more love,
Yeah.
honestly.
And now, yeah, like Linda, I have Carl Craig. So,
What about human characters? Are there like any human characters that you've really like connected with over the years?
well, obviously Kaylee. For Kaylee, being deaf and communicating through ASL, I feel like it practically primes you to be an actor or actresses because it's not just sign languages. You really have to sell and express everything with your face.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have kind of halfway honed those skills. So that
Absolutely.
she's really good at emoting, and she really comes off really well on the screen. And she's an amazingly mature person. I,
Mm-hmm.
that whole family is astounding. I often tell their parents, you guys have done an amazing job. These kids are so grounded. I mean, it's like her older sister. I don't know if you've seen it. There's the Hershey's chocolate commercial where the guy's trying to learn sign language to
Mm-hmm.
ask the girl if she wants chocolate, if she likes chocolate. That's her older sister, Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I said to her father, Joshua, I said, so you ready to have another star? And she said, she's seen how much the movies take out of Kaylee, and she's maybe do an occasional commercial. She has no interest in being in movies. I said, that's just for what? She was probably 15 at the time. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazingly mature.
Yeah, that takes a lot of self-awareness to be
Yeah,
able to make that kind of a
yeah.
boundary for
Definitely
oneself, right?
that's where at 15.
Yeah, I was absolutely the least self-aware creature at 15 years old. So I think that's a wonderful. No, like I think Haley's character really has been kind of like the highlight of the recent two MonsterVerse films, and I think that they've done such wonderful things with that character, and I think that the character specifically really humanizes those films
Mm-hmm.
because, like, I mean, like. I feel like one of the criticisms the MonsterVerse has gotten often is that the human characters are just like, you know. But then, like, her character comes along, and then I feel like really creates a drastically different dynamic that draws the audience in a lot.
I think her father thought she was going to get a much bigger reaction out of the new Empire movie,
Mm-hmm.
and the best way I can sum it up is Kaylee is the most significant human in a movie that humans are completely insignificant in.
Yes.
So I don't think she got the balance they were hoping for.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's truly a Kong movie, and that's been a big bounce for Alan. So
Oh, she got to hang out with Mothra like that. Like, who could go wrong with that, right?
yeah, when she just appeared in January down in San Antonio at a convention, and so I got new pictures from all the for the new movie, and one of them is where she's standing there, and Mothra's behind her, and Godzilla's just right down her in her face. And I just said, "You went toe to toe with the Godzilla and stared him down. That makes you the biggest badass in that movie."
Right. Right. It almost okay. So I'm sure people will eye roll when I make this comparison, but like her character really in that moment gave me the Mickey Sagusa vibes from Godzilla vs. Biollante,
Mm-hmm.
where Mickey is like on that like helipad staring down Godzilla. Like I was just like this, like the parallels here are phenomenal and I love it. And then of course her character having like psionic abilities too. Like I never get tired of seeing that in a Godzilla film. Here's the big question that I always ask everyone. How has Godzilla shaped you into the person you are today?
Well, it's obviously been a very unplanned path, but when people say, "Oh yeah, I'm a big Godzilla fan," I'm like, "Yeah, sure you are." I meet people all the time, just through my work and such, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm a big Godzilla fan." I'm like, yeah, when you become an agent, you talk to me about it. This is where I ended up. Not that I planned this, but this is where I ended up. So yeah, you can let that fandom just overtake your life. And I just jumped into it and didn't look back. Yes.
That's kind of the perfect answer. You're just like, my life. Here it is.
Yes.
Without Godzilla, none of this
None of
would
this
be
would
happening.
happen. Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness. No, I think that's wonderful. Like Godzilla has shaped my career pretty extensively too, but like it's not a situation where like I'm always immersed in it, But then I'll have like moments where I think back and I'm like, like writing and teaching, like if I did not love Godzilla early on, I would not have branched into fan fiction. I would not have branched into all of those other things, But I think it makes me develop such a bigger respect for the franchise beyond just like the sheer enjoyment of it, right? Because like I think in a way when you invest yourself to that degree, like it can be kind of sobering, I think,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then I have moments where I'm just like, am I this obsessed with a fictional character that I've allowed it to take hold this much? And then yes, that is the answer. The answer is yes.
Yeah. See, having worked with Nakajima and Satsuma and Kitagawa,
Mm.
you know, I didn't have the connection to the monster verse that I had with the Japanese monster movies, because there are times when I sit there on the screen and watch a movie and go, ah, that's such a Satsuma thing, that's such a Nakajima thing.
Mm.
I see things, mannerisms that I recognize from them outside of the suit. Um, so honestly, when I got the chance to do dinner with TJ, that was one of my main goals. Is I wanted to be able to connect the person who did Godzilla and connect with him, and connect with the movies a little more
Mm-hmm.
emotionally. And thankfully TJ's a hell of a guy, so that's why when TJ and Alan met each other, I'm just like, or Jessica and I were just like, you guys are going to get along so well.
You saw the connections being made.
You are both giant kids, huge geeks, and you're yeah. And they love they. I would love to get them both into a convention. It would be great.
Mm, that would be so cool. That would be wonderful. So, the next question for you is so you did mention that you collect, right? That you have a history of collecting. Like one of your first experiences being a Godzilla fan was collecting some of the figures that you stumbled upon, right? So like over the years, like did you branch out beyond just figures as well, or like did you tend to gravitate toward anything particular?
You know, being the '90s, the main thing was the Bandai figures. But I didn't just do Godzilla and Gamera. I did a lot of Ultraman, and that is a rabbit hole. That it's like a black hole. There's just so much there, and you know, I remember I got a book about the Bandai Ultraman figures, and I looked, and I was literally missing like two figures.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it just became overwhelming. And that's kind of the way my collection became, because I was allowed one room in the house.
Mm-hmm.
That hot room met critical mass to the point where it looked like an episode of Hoarder. You could barely move around in it.
Not critical mass.
And shortly thereafter, my eldest daughter moved out of the house, and so we moved some of the stuff into her room.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was at a crossroads, and I'm like, okay, do I fill this room, or do I realize I'm in my early 60s? My family does not want this stuff. Do I start getting rid of it? And for the last 2 years or so, I've been really just slowly letting it go.
I know. So I know you've been scaling it down because
It now fits in one room very easily.
well, like you've been like posting like calls for like sales and stuff like that, and
Yes.
I love, by the way, the convertible armor Mothra that I bought from you. It is one of my favorites. I've always wanted that. But no, I think like your collection is so prolific from what I've seen. Like it, I mean, look at what you have in the background right now. Like,
Yeah, that's mostly the Ultraman side.
but still valid, right? We are fans of Ultraman on this show, 1000%. Now, do you ever notice that some like Godzilla fans get really gatekeepy about Ultraman kind of spilling into Godzilla at all? And I'm just like, it's all Toku. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's all just have a giant Toku buffet, right? Why not?
It's because I have spilled all over the place with Toku. I mean, I've bought so many series and watched so many other of the less traditional stuff. Like after Ultraman, Kakai is my favorite.
Uh-huh.
I love Kamen Rider, especially Amazon.
I still have yet to get into that, but I've had it on my list, and I've had a number of people encouraging me to do so. What's your favorite Ultraman series?
It would be the original and Nexus,
Oh,
because I
I'm
spent
gonna cry.
I
I
spent
love Nexus.
I spent watching Nexus and going, this is a kid's show.
Nexus got so dark.
Oh yes.
And that's why I loved it. So it came out when I was in high school. And that's like, I don't know, like I was going through something. Okay. The multiple things. So like those characters I got so attached to, and I was just like, my mom was always the Ultraman fan. So she was like, hey, you like Ultraman, let's watch the original. So I did, and then I kind of started like dabbling in Ultraman a little bit from that. So but you are the first person I know, other than myself, who loves Ultraman Nexus. So that is very validating. Thank you.
Yeah, I can remember when I was going into this comic shop and buying the models. I bought everybody I knew, and then there was this Ultra 7 model. I never had no idea who Ultra 7 was in 1990, 1991.
Mm.
But I bought it and and built it and then found out that, oh my god, this thing's been going on for decades. There's so much.
So you had to go back and backtrack after that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tim, this has been such a fun conversation. I feel like we've covered so much. I do have one final question for you, though, if that's okay. And the question would be, what advice, if any, do you have for Godzilla fans who may be new to the franchise?
It is fine to get advice from other fans and older fans, but take it all with a grain of salt and like what you like. Don't let anybody take that joy from you if you like something. I mean, just watched at Pensacon, Alan, and since he's a MonsterVerse person, the fans are very young, and it was amazing. He would get down on one knee and he would have these conversations with these kids, and really talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of the kids would be like, well, I like Godzilla. And he'd be like, that's fine. Like Godzilla, that's cool. Kong doesn't have to be your favorite. Like what you like.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. And that's.
That's wonderful, though.
Yeah.
Like just being able to like have that like genuine type of exchange with someone like that, because like when I was a kid, I got like crapped on so much for loving Mothra, and if somebody had just sat me down and like, little Donny, it's okay for you to like the giant beautiful moth. It is okay, that it would have been astronomically like inclusive, and it would help me feel at that time, like I was a bigger part of the fandom and everything like that.
I
So
found through retrospection that people like what they grew up with. So my
mhm.
age, people fans they like Showa stuff. The people who grew up with Hayes, they like that. My son, is of the age, and there are a significant number of people in his age range where '98 was their first exposure to Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's a terrible movie, but they have an affinity for it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know how people are not a huge fan of the Mothra trilogy, but I love, like, I will go door to door for the Mothra trilogy.
They were perfectly good kids movies. They were
Like, and I think, I don't know, and I sometimes remember, like, I know as an adult, sometimes the films that I did hate at a certain point, I can rewatch now, and I'm like, I still don't like it, but at least now I can see things that are worth appreciating in
Mhm.
it, right? Um, and that's been kind of like, I guess as I've gotten older, I'm just like, I'm just gonna go with the flow and enjoy it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just
Well,
just
not
gonna,
every aspect of every movie is going to be wonderful for you. Like I said,
yeah,
I struggled with the happy ending of -1, but you you can let that eclipse everything else and not appreciate what the good stuff, or you can just go, okay, this part didn't work for me, but this part I really liked.
absolutely. I think that's a great way of looking at it, though. So, well, I would be remiss, Tim, if I did not ask you to plug away where people can find you and your stuff.
Um, you can go to japanlegends.blog, and that lists all the clients, and I always update upcoming conventions on there, so you can figure out where we are. Not that I don't spread it all over. One of my titles I gave myself, basically, I refer to myself as a Facebook whore.
I resonate with that so much.
But Facebook is not nearly as easy to be a whore with right now. Back in the
No.
day, I could give me 25 minutes. I could have had you on 50 different Godzilla Facebook pages. Now, if I do more than two at a time, I'm thrown in Facebook jail. So.
Timmy, you crack me up.
So,
No, this has been a
wait
wonderful.
an hour. Do two. Wait an hour.
No, I totally get what you mean, because I've done that with videos before, and they're like, you've posted too many times in a short span of time. Oh well,
I
it's
got
social
accused of being
media.
a bot once from Facebook because I was posting so quickly.
Oh. And you know what? Facebook can keep up with you. You were just too efficient, right?
I definitely got good at it. I was a good whore.
Oh my god. That's all we can hope for, right? Oh my goodness, Tim, this has been a great conversation. It's been one I've been looking forward to for a long time, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And everyone, I will have links in the description section below to Tim's socials and the Japan Legends blog. Please go check those out. The Growing Up with Godzilla premieres on the first and third Sunday of every month, relatively. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, all of that stuff. And most importantly, my friends, do not forget to keep standing tall. All right. Have a good rest of your night. Bye.
Hi, thanks.